when you get into 3D printing or tabletop gaming or Warhammer, Infinity, all of those things, there's one thing that everyone talks about, and that's how fast can you paint the miniatures? How fast can you get them on the table? If you're in D&D, they want to know if you can have them ready by the next session. If you're playing tabletop games, they want to know if it'll be ready for the next battle. And so everyone's always looking for the fastest way to do everything. And as I've been meandering down that road myself, trying to decide if I want to go quick or if I want to do super quality work, you try to find that line in between. And with that line, you learn little tricks and little habits and things. And the one I want to talk about today is zenithal priming versus dry brushing. Which one's better? Which one should you do? Do they make a difference in the speed of your paint? Do they make a difference in the overall paint job? Let's talk about it. Before we get into this too much, let me just really quick explain the difference between a zenithal prime and dry brushing. Okay, zenithal prime is when you take a model like this and you spray white from above. Okay, it simulates sunlight, right? And sunlight only comes from one direction. So naturally, the part that has the more sunlight on it is going to be lighter, which is why you use that white. I mean, you can use other colors, but most people use white. Okay. And then the other parts that are in the shade will be darker. Okay, zenithal priming. Dry brushing is where instead of using a spray can, you get the model, you prime it or whatever, and then using a brush, a thick brush, usually, when you think of like a makeup brush, a dry brush, they're thicker brushes, and you put paint on it, and then you wipe off most of the paint until it's almost, guess what? Dry. Okay, which is why they call it dry brushing, obviously. And then you just start hitting the model with that dry brush, and what it does is it will naturally lighten up all the points, all the edges that are on the model. Okay, and so you'll still have very dark recesses, but every edge will be lightened up. So think of it as like a zenithal highlight, but from all directions. Okay, so now we know the difference between the two. Let's talk about the upsides of both of them really quick. Zenithal priming is super nice because it takes 2 seconds to do. All you have to do is get your spray can, go outside, spray it from that direction, you're done. It's golden, right? So, I mean, as far as speed goes, yeah, it's so much faster. Okay, does that necessarily make it a good thing though? Well, now you've got a lot of light area, and depending on the paint, maybe it'll go well in the light, maybe it won't. Metallics usually do a little bit better on dark. So if you're doing like a tank or something like that you want to be all metal, it could be harder. You could have just made your job a lot harder. Okay. But I mean, for speed, yeah, there's nothing faster than that. And as long as your paints are thinned properly, and this I guess I have to say, it requires a little bit of ability on your part. You have to have those thinned out paints, and if they're thinned down nice to the point where when you put it on, the light kind of comes through, then the zenithal highlight is worth it. Okay, I've done a lot of zenithal highlighting, and sometimes I like it, sometimes I just think, why did I even bother, because all these colors I'm putting on are so thick anyway. So again, that comes down to my inability to paint well and to thin my paints properly. which people have pointed out before, but I'm getting better. I'm getting at the point where you can start to tell, and I'm starting to see that, yeah, it does make a difference. But is it worth it? Does it make a big enough difference depending on, your skill level? Maybe. Let's talk about the other version, okay? And that'll just be the dry brushing. What I love about dry brushing is that when you're done with it, the model looks amazing. I mean, it looks like a statue. It looks like something made out of stone the second that you're done dry brushing. So, I mean, if something happens and you run out of time and you have to get it on the table right now, no, it's not painted, but it still looks good. Like, it looks amazing. Not as amazing as it could, but it looks okay. Now, you can simulate the same stuff that a Zenithal highlight does with a dry brush. You totally can. You can put a little more paint on it and make sure you hit those areas that you want the sunlight to hit. So you can do both. You don't have to use the spray can. But I feel like if you're going to do that, it's just double the work, right? You're doing both methods, which I've never seen anyone say, yeah, you got to do both. The dry brushing method is the slap chop step 1. Right? Once you've got this highlighted the way that you want it, all you got to do is put your contrast paints on. And so I kind of did something similar to that. I wanted to see how it worked. I made my own contrast paints, which is just, I thinned down some good paints. And I went over Deuce. That's his name. His name is Deuce. And he's one of the War Machine Warjacks from the 2-player starter set that just came out. And honestly, I'm really happy with how it came out. One of the hidden things I don't think people talk about very much with the dry brushing all of those edges is that immediately you know where your highlights need to go. You know what your highlights are going to look like. And when you're putting that paint down, it naturally is going to come through on those highlights a little bit already. And so you don't necessarily have to highlight it afterwards. Again, this comes down to whether or not you're using contrast paints or you've thinned your paints properly. It's just a way for people who are not great at painting to look like they did a really good job. And I know that's why like a lot of the big painters don't like it. But if you want to get stuff on the table and you want it to look pretty good, it's a great way to do it. Okay. Now, will you see people using this method in painting competitions? No, never. So ultimately, the answer to the question of which one is better comes down to you. It's that simple truth of what is your goal. If your goal is to just get them down on the table, slap chop them, contrast paint them, hit them with that dry brush. That doesn't take very long. I gave myself 1 hour. I gave myself 1 hour on Deuce, which is why he's not done. Okay, but I mean, this is a Warjack. It's a bigger model. It's going to take a little while, but this is 1 hour of painting, and I was very happy with how it turned out. Like, I think it looks amazing, even though it's not done. If you want to get a lot of stuff on the table fast, dry brushing, contrast paints, it's the way to go. If you want to paint something and have it be this art piece that people are going to pick up and want to look at wherever you go, honestly, I would stick to that Zenithal highlight. It's going to help you to get that really realistic light on your Mini. It'll help you with non-metallic metals. It does a lot of stuff there that I think is worth it. And I know I made a video a couple weeks ago saying how I didn't think it was doing anything. And then I was like, you know what? I probably shouldn't say that without trying it first because I'm the slap chump. Okay. And that's why I was thinking about calling it that. And I was so shocked at the difference that it started to make when I started to do those things that everybody's been telling me to do. Okay. And so ultimately it comes down to whichever one you want to do. Sometimes you just got to get stuff down on the table. And if that's the case, slap chop it up. Why not? If you want to do something yourself and you want to do that nice art piece, spend some time on it. Because ultimately that's going to be the difference. You're going to spend a lot more time on the nice looking models, and there's no way around that. Yes, you can start using an airbrush, you can do those other things, and it'll decrease that time. But in comparison to slap chopping something, you're still going to be well over what that would take. So, pick the one that works for you. And, as always, if you got anything that can help this process, for those of you who have been painting for a long time, what do you do to paint quickly, especially when you have large units, like large groups of units? Do you just do them all in bulk at the same time? Do you do one at a time? What makes your process easier? What makes your process better? Okay, I've only been doing this for a year. I don't have that experience. I'm learning as I go, which I think a lot of people are. And so I would love to hear what you have to say about that. And if you like the content that we're making here, as always, please like, subscribe, stick around. I am determined to get better at this. And I think over the last year, I have gotten way better. So I hope you stick around for that journey, and I hope I make it worth your while. Thanks for coming around and watching this video. And if you could, leave a comment below. It helps get this out to more people, and it helps me to have something to do during the week in between videos that I can comment on. So go ahead, drop a comment. And as always, don't spend so much time making your world that you forget to spend some time in it. Until next time.